Hi, this is the third video with Art Journaling with Susanna. I'm Susanna, and I'm glad that you have stuck with it for the through the first two videos, and now that you're here for the third installment. We're going to transform our collage into a piece of personal expression. That is the third step in my process. Now, I'm going to just kind of walk you through how I added paint to a collage, just to give you ideas of things to think about as you do it. But as always, this is just a launching point for you to experiment and try things that fit with your style and the types of art supplies you like to use. So this is how I do it, and you'll find out how you do it. I'm going to just switch to my top-down camera to start with, and then I'll get to my slides. This is just kind of um, a leftover piece from the gluing demo I did in the last video. I have some paint brushes, I have some water, I have some paper towel. I also have this little painter's tray. You can use one of these, or you can use, a paper plate, whatever you prefer. I like to just have the primary colors and black and white. I find that I can mix almost any color using those. But sometimes, I like to have something that's just kind of a little different, something that's gonna pop. So I have these paints that are kind of these with luster metallics. And I have definitely seen art journal classes and others using very particular colors because they want to make sure that they're always using, say, the same mint green. And so you're welcome to use whatever type of paint makes you feel comfortable. But as you do art journaling, if you are kind of taking this approach of using the primary colors, you really can mix almost any color you need, and that can be kind of fun for working with your pieces. So I tend to use acrylic paints, and that's the primary thing that I do. I kind of transform my collage with paint. But then on top of that, sometimes I'll use transfer paper, sometimes I'll use colored pencils. I use gel pens sometimes. So this is kind of anything goes. And I really think it's kind of a flow process. So, I don't set out with a particular idea in mind of what I'm going to do. I just start mixing paint, and I kind of see what comes of it. So, I might be pretty risk averse at the beginning with my collage. I might think, well, I don't really know where I want to go with this, so I'm just going to kind of, maybe I'll see if I can make a color as sort of in the vein of mint green. I don't know how it's going, but I'll just, kind of start with that, and maybe I need a little more blue. A little more white. How am I doing? Oh, it's a little dark still. Gonna bring some white in. I might just be able to start connecting the piece to the rest of the page, working around the edges. So I'm gonna switch over to my slides. I'm not doing a full painting demo in this video, but I just wanted to give you a sense that, if you don't know how to get started, you can kind of get started with something really simple, like just connecting the edges of your pieces to the edges of your page. And as you do that, you're going to start figuring out ideas that you have. You're going to start coming up with things you might want to try. And, that's kind of fun. So I just encourage you to start small, start with little subtle things, and then just kind of see where it takes you. And you'll have a lot of fun. You'll take some risks. Maybe you'll mess some things up, and then you'll fix it, and you'll keep going. And eventually, you'll have a full page collage. Okay, so I'm gonna switch back to my slides. All right, so I'm just gonna walk you through sort of how I've transformed some other collages, and I wanted to give you a glimpse of somebody else's art journaling besides mine. So today I'm going to be talking through how to transform a collage into a finished piece of personal artistic expression, and I'm showing you an image here that was by Natalie, who taught me how to art journal back in 2017. She has a totally different style, and her pieces use a lot of layering. She uses words, she draws. She's a really talented artist. So just to give you a sense that, again, every art journaling piece is as unique as the person who made it. And I encourage you to mix your media. So this is a time to really just go with what's interesting to you, what you feel like using, what you have fun using. Here's another piece by Natalie, and she really incorporated a lot of different images with the hands and the text. There's even some music score behind the hands, doilies and religious iconography. So, you can really do all kinds of things with art journaling. Again, I've got my question slide. When I'm teaching this in person, I have that opportunity to engage. But on this website, again, I just encourage you to email me if there's anything that I can answer. And I'll also have some links on the website with resources. All right, so you have a full page collage. And this was one that I had in the second video. And the full page collage pasted down and dried. And that's what you're going to start with. And you can have that full page pasted collage done and paint over it a solid color if you want. Or you can really kind of work with the images themselves and do more minor painting. So it may be a first layer or it may be the primary layer, just depending on your process. But you've got this first layer and you are welcome to just go ahead and get started. If you've got your paint and you've got your collage in front of you, just listen to me chat while you paint, and I hope that you'll get some ideas for things to try. I know that when I first started, I just had trouble knowing how to start. And so like I was showing you on the top-down camera, I just encourage you to kind of work with the edges to start with, blend edges. If there's any scuffs or smudges, you can kind of create opportunities to just mix your paints, match your paints, and start correcting those little eyesores. And that's how you get into the piece. And once you're doing that, every time I do it, I always find ideas for things I want to change. And that's when it starts to kind of get more creative and the piece emerges. So you're going to start adding new elements at some point. But if you don't know how to start, just start with the edges and let it go from there. So here's a piece that was a collage, and I can show you how I transformed it with paint. I completed the sky at the top. I extended the water. I kept a lot of the structure here, but connecting it to the edges. So this is one of those collages that, didn't too drastically change, but the paint really kind of made it a more harmonious piece. And the collage is just the beginning. So, if you have more negative space, if you just have a few images like this, you can kind of see I took the time to add a few more images there on the left, the river, but I also did a lot with paint. And this was a really powerful art journaling piece for me. I recognized that I was kind of splitting my energy. There was a part of me up on that tightrope, and then there was a part of me more centered, and I drew sort of in a Frida Kahlo-esque way, a heart connecting the two different self-images there. And I recognized that my energy was getting pulled in too many directions and that I needed to kind of recenter. So, that's something that can emerge from an art journaling piece. And so you can really have fun with paint and also continue to make meaning out of it. And I like to show some that, kind of go wrong or don't come together right away, just so that you can feel encouraged by that. This was one that I was working on. I really liked the collage on the right side, but I couldn't figure out what to do with the left side. And I had this sequin piece that I was trying to work with. And so I got it to this point and I was trying to work with it. I tried using a sort of a solid color background, and it just wasn't quite coming together for me. And then I took away the sequins. I decided it wasn't working, and I found this new way of connecting the mountains to the water, and the piece really came together. So, I just like to show you how dramatically a piece can change. And this was a great example of that. Also, another one where I had a very full collage and I was really kind of in an uncertain time and I was dealing with a lot of confusion. And, I started working with this kind of sea creature and this dancer, and I was playing with it, but it felt very busy and I wasn't quite sure. And then as I painted, I just ended up using a lot of black. And, that was kind of therapeutic, just painting all that dark black over that collage. And I also realized that I did feel in the dark, and I wasn't quite sure the direction. And so, there was really a therapeutic process happening there as well. And so, just because it's glued down and part of the piece doesn't mean it's always visible at the end. But all those pieces helped me to get to this place with the piece. And so you never know where it's going to go. And sometimes they don't change as dramatically. This one is one that stayed largely the same. I incorporated a tribute to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who had recently died when I made this piece. I have some images from dreams. This was just kind of a gentle addition to kind of tie together some different images of the strong feminine. I have the red mermaid tail and the red hair of the Mary Magdalene character, and sort of just this idea of the strong woman and those values. And here I have a very different collage. I had this these hands holding a bead. I was working with kind of images of up and down. I have a bird, I have stairs. There's a woman kneeling on the upper right, a woman looking up on the lower right. And as I started painting, I really was able to combine and harmonize the piece. So, some change. But one thing that was really fun about this piece was just painting the circle. Using the shape of those hands, it became sort of a symbol of self, and just all that swirl with blue was so fun to paint. And it also kind of created its own meaning for me as I did it. And here's a piece that, I started with this kind of girl who was in a parade. I think it was in Ireland, and there's this parachute behind her, all these different images of roots and rock walls, and it was completely transformed with paint. I created an image of sort of a threshold. And so, I just show you all these different examples to show you how much can change between the second step and the third step. So I'll walk you in detail through one just to show you some of the things I think about. Here's an example of a collage where I painted over the first layer mostly with blue paint. And then I started adding more ephemera on top of that. So you can continue to glue using the gel matte medium even as a second layer, third layer. So you can see that I have this base layer that has some texture that's been painted blue, and I'm adding things on top of it. But I left a few things that were visible through the blue paint. Like I didn't paint solid blue. So I had the rapids showing on the top middle, and I had this girl at the bottom right. She's laying out in a bathing suit, and so I added some gel pen hair and just kind of had some fun with her at the bottom. And then I had this cardboard that was kind of a frame covered in washi tape, a silver frame from another project, and I was just trying to use it. And I think it was something about the angel statue facing away from the center of the page. It felt very separate, the two sides of the page, and I thought maybe I'll just go with that and see how this border adds to it. So I pasted that on a whim around the angel. And sometimes you just got to follow your instincts, because after I did that, it occurred to me that I could cut away where her hands were, the directional from where her hands were outstretched, and kind of that created a really neat opportunity for her to kind of burst out of the frame. And I also added some more pieces of torn images, ephemera. I was kind of working with this kind of divine feminine theme in this one. And, you know, I am not a professional artist, and as I'm painting, I often mess up. And so I just keep some paper towel and water nearby. And, you know, as I'm painting, if I try something and it doesn't look good, I just wipe it off and I keep going. So, or I paint over it if it's already dried. This is a process that can look messy in the middle, but I really encourage you to take risks and keep going until you get it to where you want it to be. So in this case, I used paint to kind of create the magic and movement coming out of her arms, her hands, bursting through this frame, and that was really fun to do. I like looking for opportunities to create a sense of movement on a page, and that's something fun to do with composition. Also, I like connecting lines, especially horizon lines across images. So I was kind of working with lines across these different images and blurring the boundaries between them, adding little pops of color. That's something that you can do as well. And because this piece was a little divided, I had the angel facing away from the center of the page on the left side, and this female character facing away on the right side. I decided I needed to have some kind of common element to connect the two sides of the page. And so I added these little flowers. I was working with this feminine feel, and I put them around in different places on the page, and that just kind of brings a sense of cohesion. I also thought about it with regard to my color palette, you know, just working with hues that created that sense of harmony in the piece. And most of all, I just got into a flow and I just let it emerge. And that's what I encourage you to do. You know, as you're painting, just try things and don't be afraid to wipe it off or paint over it, and let yourself transform the collage into something new. So with that, I really showed you the basics of how I do an art journaling piece. So I release you to just paint, draw, and have fun with yours. In the first video, we tore images. In the second one, we pasted down a collage, and now you're transforming it into a piece. And once you get it where you want it to be, that is an opportunity for you to, you could consider writing a sentence on the back, or a little note just saying what it conveyed for you. That's not something I've always done, but a woman who took my class does that every time, and she really has encouraged others to do it. And I started doing captions on my website and found it kind of meaningful to do it that way. I have a little artist statement. So that's something you can do when you finish if you want to. Or you can just start a new piece, and that's back to tearing. So once you get a piece finished, you're going to let it dry. I sometimes do use some type of a matte varnish on the top, and I'll let that dry. But then the main thing that I found that helps with my journal pages to keep them from sticking is I will sprinkle some baby powder between my hands and on the page, and initially the powder will be visible, but I'll just brush it with a wide paintbrush, and that keeps the pages from sticking together. It's a great tip. So a little baby powder. Sometimes for storage, I'll keep some wax paper between my pages. But that's pretty much all you need to do. I let it dry before I close my piece, and then when I'm done with one, I start a new piece with tearing out images, and the whole process repeats. So you're back to video one again. So thank you so much for trying art journaling. I hope that you enjoyed these videos. I hope it planted a seed, and I hope that you will find this practice meaningful in your own life.